one of the main problems we have in modern Tai Chi, and in the US especially, is that all of our reference points are basically corrupted or possibly wrong. Right, so I do the hidden tradition of the Yang style of Tai Chi, which implies, if there's a hidden tradition, that there's a public version, and that the public version is, according to our the story of the hidden tradition style, the public version is diluted, is wrong essentially. That means that all the texts that we read, especially after the 1920s or so, 1910s, are going to be wrong, right? So there's going to be wrong information within them. So we can't go back and study the Tai Chi classics because they're going to have wrong information. And to me, that seems like a truth. The Tai Chi that we practice today has no bearing on the Tai Chi that was practiced 150 years ago, 200 years ago. Tai Chi started as the Grand Ultimate Fist. It was one of the greatest martial arts at the time. It's now a laughing stock. Nobody believes that Tai Chi is an actual martial art anymore. People look at push hands and essentially laugh at it because most of it is frankly laughable. So there's a core missing that's there, and we can't rely on the text that we have because most of them are going to be corrupted or are going to be missing something. So what I would like to do is to go back essentially to first principles, to look at the form and say, what does the form tell us? Right? What are some of the basic philosophies of fighting that we can find in the form? So it's not about going, application by application, but instead it's looking at what does the form do repeatedly, and how can we take that information and then infuse our practice, and especially infuse our push hands with that knowledge. So I'm going to take a look at the 13 postures, which I know is actually, here's another thing, it's not common to a lot of forms. Right, so a lot of styles, the 48s, the 104s, etc., don't have the 13 postures as an actual set of movements. The hidden tradition has it, and it basically lays out all the basic patterns, all the basic grammar, basically, that we're going to be using in the rest of the form. So that's why I'm going to start with the 13 postures. Hopefully, this is going to be information that you can apply to other forms. It's because it's more of a way of thinking, really, than anything else. So we're going to take a look at it. Hopefully, you can get something out of it. You can look at your own form and see if you can extract anything out of it, and then we'll take on from there. The first thing I want to look at is the first section of the 13 postures. So in 13 postures, there's 3 sections. Each section is repeated 4 times in 4 directions. But I want to take a look specifically at the stepping, right? So that we're not looking at applications for now. We're looking at stepping. That's going to give us a hint as to how Tai Chi is supposed to work. Rise up, step out, ward off, roll back, push, press, seal it closed, boom, back, and push. So the stepping that we did in this case, right, so there's that shift of direction, shift, rise up, step up, ward off, sit back. So this is a press, and then we do this half step, rock back, step. So in the first section, the first thing is there's no stepping, there's no full step. There's only half steps, right? So from here, that rock back, and then I step, or half step, because notice the same foot is forward. And I do these turns here with the hips, but then I do this half step forward where I bring my left foot, in this case, to my toes, and then I shift back onto my left foot, back onto the front. So the right leg in this case is always facing front. So what we have here is this half step, right? Now, the important thing here is that in the first set of movements, there's one way of getting away from a punch or a push or an attack, and that is to sink back, right? It's not curve in the back, it's sitting down on that leg, bending, hips are tucked in, and I lean back, so there's a straight line from knee to head. So what that shows us is that in this first approach to Tai Chi, we are shifting forward, right? We're forward, something happens, I can lean back, but I'm not stepping back, and then I'm immediately forward. Or half step back forward, right? So that hint number one, we're moving forward, right? And this is related to something that is in the Tai Chi classics, right? My opponent moves first, but my fist lands first. And so it's this philosophy of letting the other guy move, but the minute they move, right, we're in their space. It's also in the Tai Chi classics that talk about the mind is like a hawk hunting a rabbit, meaning you're always there, you're looking for an opening in your opponent. And this simple half step is part of that mindset, right? Because if we're here and I have an opponent in front of me and I've either thrown a punch or he throws a punch, I'm sitting back, I'm not moving back, I'm still in that fighting space, right? But I'm blocking and then immediately in. Or punch back in, right? That's an important mental thing to grasp, because what we see in push hands often is that we learn, if there's a big push, we step back and go with it. This idea that we're always yin, we're receiving energy and we're letting the energy through and pass through, which is why we have these kind of big circular step, which we'll see are in the form. But the first part of the 13 postures is a step forward, not backwards. So that should put us in the right mindset. When we're doing our push hands or when we're fighting or sparring, we shouldn't be retreating constantly from the attack or from the energy that's given. We should absorb it, but then immediately come back in, right? So it's absorb, come back. Be in the space. Don't lose contact. Don't lose connection, right? So even here, the first move is actually roll back, but it's here. Notice I'm not stepping back. Somebody pushes me, I deflect, come back, and I'm in. So I'm here. Deflect without going backwards and in. So I'm staying in that fighting space, right? So it's here. Deflect, come back. Half step. So we're getting into the opponent's face, essentially, into the opponent's space. So that's going to be the lesson number one from looking just at the stepping of in the 13 postures. We have to change our mindset. We're in our opponent's space. And if you look at push hands and if you look at really a lot of the applications, because they're more, it's almost more like wrestling, we have to be in the opponent's space, right? If we're too far, right, then it's just a punching game, or if we're that far, it becomes a kicking game, right? Most of the applications that we do that are, twist, the yanks and all that, require that you're actually quite close. So the skill that we're asked to develop is this idea of getting into somebody's space, quickly shuffling so that we go past the arm length and we come in essentially elbow length, right? All the blocks that are here where we're controlling the opponent's elbow. I can't do that if I'm far away. If I'm going to control the elbow, if I'm going to yank, I have to be close. So it's all about this kind of, he throws a punch and then I step in. And now I'm inside the space. So when we're doing push hands, right, so we're pushing, the thought should be, how do I block a punch and then shift forward, get even closer, so now I can close off, right? So the push, in a way, the power comes from the stepping forward, not from pushing with the hands, right? And I'll have a whole other video on push hands and where I think it should be going, because of course we're stuck when we do fixed foot push hands. We're stuck. We can't make that step, which is one of the problems, right? But this idea that we need to be in the space of the opponent, that's going to be a crucial shift in our mindset, right? So that's just looking at the first section of the 13 postures.